Governor, I will let you kick us off.
Well, thank you. I'm looking forward to this discussion. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, for allowing us in your great town. This is leading the country in so many ways, including the highest percentage of electric buses per capita in the nation, and a lot of other good news.
Missed you on the bike ride a couple weeks ago.
I'm really sorry I had to be a governor.
I rode with Brad. He killed
Well,
me.
I'm sure you drafted him. The brother-in-law that I usually ride with had a graduation, and I had some governor's duties, so I hope he's back. It is one of the most beautiful rides in the state, and I want to thank the Rotary for putting it on. It's just, they do a super, super job. So I hope I get to next year. Listen, I'm really excited to be here. This is the first place that people land in a plane flying across the Pacific, and it's one of the most successful communities in broadband access, and I'm very pleased with what you've been able to achieve, and I've come as part of a statewide broadband access tour, which we're doing over a 3-day period. We started in Pomeroy, we went to Pullman, we went to Spokane, we were in Chewelah this morning, we went to Quincy, we're in Wenatchee, and tomorrow we're going to La Push and Aberdeen, because I believe, my administration is totally committed to universal broadband access, because it means everything in every endeavor. It doesn't matter what kind of endeavor you're in, you really need broadband access to be able to be competitive, to maximize your opportunities in your life and in your business, and we got to get this job done. And Wenatchee has been very successful in doing that, so I want to take some of your successes and help spread it around the rest of the state. And I'd also like your ideas on how to take the next steps moving forward. We know how important this is. If you're an educator, it's critical to give your students online access. Having kids right now at a high school that don't have access to broadband is a little bit like saying we're going to give half the kids textbooks and the other half doesn't get the textbooks. That's literally what it's becoming, given the utility of online learning. I was at Washington State University, and we heard that on the college level as well. In medicine, telemedicine is the dream come true. We were in Chewelah this morning talking about how you get world-class neurologists if you've got a stroke victim in about 30 seconds, but it's not available in the doctor's offices yet in the outlying clinics to really maximize that opportunity. If you're a small business person, I was talking to a boat manufacturer in Port Angeles the other day. They happen to have access, I think. But listen, if you're selling a product internationally, you gotta have real time, because you don't keep inventory anymore. And so having access to that worldwide market is absolutely critical. And we want to grow those small businesses in every small town in the state of Washington. Because a small town that hires, a small company that hires 10 people in Chewelah or Pomeroy is as important as Boeing building a new airplane to the state of Washington in my book. Maybe it's because I'm from Sealand and I raised my 3 kids in the orchards of Sealand. I'm kind of have that small town attitude. So we're really excited about what Wenatchee has achieved. And we're excited about some of the progress we've made. And Brad, I'm glad he's joined us because he's part of that this year. We increased our curb funding $10 million to have a little seed funding to help spread the private-public partnership. We passed a bill that will allow ports to have greater access, and I'm glad that we had a bipartisan success of those issues. This has been a real bipartisan effort, I think. People recognize this on both sides of the aisle, how important this is. But we need to ratchet it up to the next level. And we're going to talk about looking at a broadband office in state government to really coordinate through multiple agencies, because we really need every agency on board on this. Ag, SPI, natural resources, all these agencies have to be working on this effort if we're really going to make this fly. Our career connected learning, we're really making an effort to improve our career connected learning opportunities. In Switzerland, 70% of kids are paid apprenticeships in high school. If we're going to make that actually work, we've got to have broadband access for people to engage them in the apprenticeship program. So we're looking for the next steps as well, and I hope to tee up some next steps in the next session of the legislature, and I'd like your suggestions on what you think would be most useful moving forward in this regard. So I want to thank you, and I'm looking forward to your advice, concerns, critiques, and advice where to get the best chocolate milkshake in Wenatchee. I have phenomenal owls. I've heard owls. I've tried owls, and it's pretty good.
Well, we thought, what we're really excited about at GWATA, and I think I speak for Chelan County, is the focus that was put on broadband really early in our community, and that's tied to a lot of our success today. the PUD, I'm gonna let Pat kind of step in a little bit, had a in-house incident, so they weren't able to join us. But maybe we can talk a little bit about where we are right now in terms of broadband, a little bit of history.
Terrific, Jenny. You may be creating an expectation I can't meet there, but Governor, there was a fatality.
Yes, I'm sorry, I forgot to mention that. I know the whole community will be affected by this.
You bet.
Deeply.
And Steve Wright, the manager at the PUD, asked me this morning to present a few comments for him, so I'm not prepared to speak on their behalf other than to...
I will be calling Steve to express our condolences to the loss, and we'll have a discussion about this as well. So.
Very good.
Yeah.
May I briefly
Yes, please.
read a couple
Yeah.
things that he asked me to read?
Yeah.
The PD had the foresight to recognize the importance of broadband to its customer owners, and the telecom companies were not committed to providing state-of-the-art access in rural areas. So the importance of broadband to the quality of life, education, employment, and economic development has increased many times over in the last decade. Chelan County is in great shape with fiber to 74% of the county today, and an expansion program in progress to reach 85 to 90% of the county. To date, we've invested, that is, the PUD has invested over $100 million in capital with another $25 million committed to the public power benefit expansion. Recent legislation which focused on rural broadband is troubling to Chelan. It would essentially have rural electric tax ratepayers subsidizing for-profit telecom companies in urban areas through subsidized pole attachment rates, and I believe you're familiar with that controversy. Steve wanted to mention it. Pole attachments and wireless attachments have no impact on getting broadband to the unserved and underserved in rural areas. Yet this recent legislation focused on attachment issues. At the same time, the current FCC actions under the current administration are moving towards usurping both states' rights and municipal utilities' rights and force the subsidization of attachments for highly profitable telecom companies. The PUDs have a long history of a trusted provider of reliable utility services, including broadband. PUDs, though, need funding on a level playing field to continue addressing the needs of unserved and underserved rural residents. The last 15% of any network build is extraordinarily expensive, and an equal opportunity at receiving funding is necessary. State-level offices can assist by being industry and technology agnostic and being concerned about equitable funding of broadband deployments that meet both current and future needs of the unserved and underserved. So thanks for allowing me to read that. I really can't support it with the technical expertise necessary. I think you're familiar with these issues, and certainly.
Yeah, let me ask you, you may or may not be able to help, maybe somebody here can, the concern about the administration's proposals that would essentially cause the subsidization by those who've done well. I'm unfamiliar with that. Is anybody familiar with that?
That wasn't yours. That was Senator Carlisle's bill, which did not get out.
Oh, no, I know that one, but he was referring to.
I think he's talking about the federal level, the FCC taking action.
Yeah.
No, there's some federal concern. I'm not sure what that concern was, and I'll ask Steve when I talk to him if you know he's familiar with it. I have to say that's one of the things we'd like Uncle Sam to help a little bit more in this regard. And one of the ways we've heard repeatedly already today is that the federal government's mapping, which purports to show access, is totally unrealistic in many, many places. And I've been told in other forums here that that's because they've got improper information from the providers, and so the maps just are totally unrealistic. So that's something we will be talking to the federal government about. Do you have any insights on that?
I do. The Connect America Fund is based on what the ISPs reported. And I just recently purchased a company in Moses Lake that had internet, and to find out they never reported any of theirs. Like, it's not a requirement, I guess. And so this whole area that they think is not covered, and really isn't covered, they think isn't covered too. And so they're basing their funding on these maps, and I would agree with you that I'm not really quite confident that they're very accurate.
Did you say it's not even required? This is
Well, I'm not the person that at our company would know that for sure, but it appears not to be required because
if it is, it hasn't been followed.
Right. We've been filling out ours.
Thank you.
but there are companies that have not filled those out.
Well, it sounds like some of the things, it's kind of hard to believe this, but some of the folks have told me that essentially the reporting is what could be available. And then on the maps, they put it in as, this is available. I don't know if that's actually what's going on or not. But
And their funding doesn't really depend on you actually getting any customers. It's just funding that allows you to say that you could get the customer.
Right.
But you don't actually have to provide the service. And so we're right in the middle of that, in fact, right at the end of that process right now. And we're competing against the ILEX, the big telecom companies, and we're fairly small compared to them. And so it's been actually pretty frustrating for us to do that. We're waiting to hear back how we did in that process.
Well, I would like you, when that happens, to talk to our staff about your experience. And I think we do need to engage our federal legislators on this, because there's work to be done by Uncle Sam as part of this as well.
Could I speak on the
There's
federal?
one more thing, Jeff.
Okay, yeah.
There appears to be, from my perspective, an arbitrary piece to this, a very subjective piece to this. And that's what's kind of frustrating for me too.
In what way?
Well, part of this Connect America Fund is a wireless piece. They want to fund areas that there are like there's no internet there. And our Sky-Fi product, which I understand I'm on this little thing for, it addresses that. It is this areas where there's no fiber yet. And fiber is always the best thing to get around here. But if you don't have any fiber, it's nice to have something better than nothing. Well, we have about 5,000 customers which directly meet what they want to do. These are people who can't get fiber, don't have high-speed internet, and we're delivering it to them over wireless. Yet they're giving the impression that our submissions, that we can do this in these rural areas, is just essentially being ignored by them, and it's just really frustrating. And for the reasons are still very unclear to us. And so they haven't come back and said, well, this is why you didn't do this or you can't do that, which at least I can argue with. But right now, I just think they won't. The answers are so vague. It's really hard to answer them. So, sorry, Jenny.
No, no.
I've had a perfect relationship with the Trump administration. I'm sure we get to the bottom of this, but we will try to get a few answers in this regard. And I'll be talking to our federal delegation as well, and we hope we will make this a bipartisan effort in this regard. So we'll keep talking to you about it.
Yeah, that would be great. Thank you.
Yeah, just to piggyback a little bit on what Dimitri is talking about. So as he indicated, at the federal level, there's the two pots of money, the broadband and the mobility fund. And so I was pleased to see the FCC did crack down on national carriers to actually turn in, on the mobile side of things, engineering maps rather than marketing maps, which have historically been there. And we all know those marketing folks, which I'm one of them sometimes, kind of push the envelope on what their coverage is. So they actually had to sign very robust documentation validating that on the mobile side. And so then right now what's happening is there's a challenge process. And so it's still open, and maybe as you travel across the state and or even the folks in the room here, it's very important for government and, in my case, tribal entities to engage in that process, because the only way that we can fight this is through a system that is there for us now to say this is not right. And so we're going out to Montana in the next couple of weeks to actually do drive testing and do that challenge process for a tribal partner. And there are some others here in Washington that are engaging in that. So on the broadband side of things, as Dimitri's saying, it's challenging because a lot of ISPs aren't regulated, so they're not getting into a system that can be recognized. It's really kind of on the honor system. And so what the FCC has done now, and it's a step in the right direction, is even voice over IP connected providers need to register with the FCC so they can get incorporated into the process. So, to Steve Wright's comments that Pat delivered to us, it's really challenging, and as you know, in your job is to balance the private and public interests. in all of this arena. So I think that's going to be a continual, the public utility districts and their infrastructure, which companies like LocalTel can leverage, is very important, but it isn't regulated. So that kind of creates in itself a different playing field too. So just some comments. We follow very closely what's happening at the federal level, and we obviously want there to be an understanding so that federal dollars and state dollars can work together to help bridge the digital divide that we're all still focused on, solving this problem.
Could you tell us about Native Network?
Yeah, I'm later on the agenda.
Go for
I'm
it,
getting in
go
trouble
for it.
with the
No,
boss.
no,
but-
it's okay. Go for it. Jump in.
So, Governor, my business partner couldn't be here today. He's actually over on the Quinault Nation visiting with them about a project underway. But Andy Metcalf and I have operated our headquarters here in the Wenatchee area since 1993. So everybody in the room doesn't go to sleep, just to give you a couple snippets, is we were on the team that built the first cellular company that built to the Canadian border and then north over to Spokane. So Chelan, Douglas, Okanagan, Ferry, Stevens, and Pend Oreille counties. Those assets became AT&T property eventually, so that's that system today. When we exited from that company, we started a company very similar to Dimitri's, in that we were a CLEC, a competitive local exchange carrier, regulated by the PUC, of course. And we let Dimitri, because he's so good at it, do all of the retail telephone business, and we stayed focused on wholesale. So the best comparison for you guys is we were NoaNet's counterpart on the private side of things. So we built about 1,800 miles of fiber through the Pacific Northwest, and we primarily carried cellular backhaul, so wireless backhaul. We were kind of some of the first connections into crazy places like Colville and Omak, and just out into those tier 5 areas that CenturyLink and Frontier didn't want to touch. So we also carried a lot of, you guys want to go back to having dial-up internet?
I still have dial-up clients.
I try not to ever brag about dial-up internet, but we had tons of modems in Eastern Washington. We usually sold those to AOL or different companies. But anyway, fast forward, Andy and I took 5 or 6, 7 years off, did some consulting, and we started working with the Tulalip tribe, and they're not challenged in any way that we can see. They're in a very nice location. They've done a really good job there. But we helped them become their own telephone company, and it got us thinking about how a strong tribe could actually help some of the other tribes in the state. And so we helped them develop infrastructure between Tulalip and Wellpinit, Washington, which is where Spokane tribe is. And so we helped facilitate them selling wholesale services to the Spokane tribe. And that turned into building a microwave system from the US Bank building in Spokane out to Wellpinit, so they could deliver their own internet service. And so that's how Native Network got going. And we decided, I don't know if we knew by design this is where our passion would be, but now we're very passionate about it, and we have 9 tribes in Washington state and then several others in Idaho and Montana that we're specifically helping them take advantage of NoaNet's long haul and middle mile, yet build their own distribution networks. Because as you know from, Maria Cantwell's done great work in this area, and some of the stats that her office talks about are legitimate. They might even be a little bit low, right? It's like 68% of folks on tribal lands do not have broadband infrastructure. So we see a real need there, and I did recently sit in the CURB training in Ephrata this week. So I'm very pleased to hear about the $10 million that has been set aside specifically for broadband, because immediately we know of a few who can take advantage of that. So I think that's a great start, and I appreciate that.
Yeah, good.
Yeah.
It's a good story.
Thank you.
Glad you're still in business.
Yeah, me too. It's hard work. It is. Yeah.
Is the curb system, listening to the training, is that a good system right now? Is it set up the right way?
I do. I think that gal Janae is very passionate, very sharp, and I think she will be able to really make things happen. I was impressed with, and we'll see if it happens, but it sounds like she can, the organization can move pretty fast, and that's encouraging.
Good,
Yeah.
good.
So Native Network's really exciting for GWATA to work with, because one of our core focuses, in addition to this topic around broadband, is supporting technology growth in North Central Washington. We feel, and we've worked with Joseph closely, that Seattle doesn't have to be the only tech hub, right, of Washington State. And so it's inspiring to see the work that Jenny and her company is doing. They're longtime entrepreneurs from our community. But I'd love to introduce you to a couple other entrepreneurs that have recently moved here because we have broadband access. And I'd love to start with Tom and Lorian from Pet Hub, and perhaps have you introduce your company and why you are in Wenatchee.
Sure, thank you. So Tom Arnold and Lorian Clemens. Lorian's here because she's smarter than me, and so she's backing me up. I hire smart people. So what we do as a company is we help municipalities bring their pet licensing into the 21st century by using digital ID tags. So these ID tags link to an online profile, and then that helps animals get home a lot faster. So it reduces their costs for animals entering shelters. It brings them into the 21st century, so people actually want to get their licenses. And then we actually rebate some money back to them for anybody who upgrades to our premium subscriptions. So it introduces them to a new form of donations or things like that back into their shelter.
Fascinating. How'd you get into this?
Well, I was at Microsoft and it hit me. I've been a geek forever, and I was wondering, how am I doing something that's making a difference? And sitting there and running analytics reports for Microsoft just wasn't working for me. And so I was like, how can I do something that is meaningful to me, and I'm also loving what I'm doing? And so I had a cat that went missing and panicked and couldn't figure out what services were out there to help me get it back. So we have an Amber Alert system so we can broadcast out. So that was one thing we did. And then if somebody found my animal that was injured, I would like them to be able to get all the contact information, maybe its current medical records, its license information, all that stuff. So that's where it started from.
Wow.
And you started in Seattle, basically?
We started in Seattle. We started focusing on retail. We thought we could go and get this all into retail and everything, and we spent a lot of time and money on retail. And realized, and we tried municipalities for a long time, but if you're under 5 years old as a company, they don't want to talk to you because they're worried you won't last.
Right.
So about 2 years ago, just over 2 years ago, when we hit our 5-year mark, we went and tried out a couple of different things. We went to National League of Cities on the East Coast. And we talked to a lot of mayors and a lot of council members to understand if this was resonating with them, and it did. And so that's when we pivoted to municipalities, and they loved the idea. And now we're 5 years old, and so they said, we want to work with you.
That's also the time we decided to move the business over to Wenatchee.
Right, sorry, I didn't even answer
Because that was for our purposes, being in Seattle, and there's a lot of great tech stuff going on there, but the cost of operating business over there is quite high.
Right.
And we knew we were going to need to scale and scale quickly without a lot of revenue, a lot of cash to do that on. And Tom had already established himself over here through Ski Patrol and Mission Ridge and a home over here. So we made a decision as a company to move everything over here. And some of our staff came with us, but we also had a lot of staff here. We found great resources, like with JC's company, for tech and phone call support. They help our pets get home through our 24-hour call center. And then there's other infrastructure things here. And the broadband was a big deal for us, because as an internet company, we needed to have reliable, fast, at any time, because it's sometimes minutes count when you've got a lost pet situation.
Yeah.
So we had to be able to offer that to our clients that are across the country and across the world.
Well, that's a great Wenatchee story, and we want to duplicate it times 1,000. And that's really true, because we want to dissipate and spread around the great tech success we've got. And I like to think that Mission Ridge is what got you here too. So
Mission Ridge definitely got here. And then what's keeping me here is I had no idea the hunger and the passion for bringing tech companies here. And they were kind enough to invite me to participate in GWATA, and so to be able to go and talk to people about what it is we're doing and my excitement for being here, it's very cool. I'm in the STEM program to volunteer and help these kids who are learning how to program.
Right.
I will do that every weekend. It's
Yeah.
just so much fun.
Well, thanks for doing that. We hope you're going to participate in our Career Connector Learning apprenticeship program we got to get going here too. So I might recruit you to volunteer for that.
Please.
They actually are huge advocates for our STEM programs, GWATA and the Apple STEM Network, which is under Washington STEM's umbrella. And we're already duplicating the Pat Huff story, but before Subsplash kind of shares, maybe Commissioner Baldwin or Pat would like to talk about how you brought them over to Wenatchee. I'll let you do that part.
I'd be happy to. Governor, the Port of Chelan County's got a pretty proud tradition in recruiting technology companies. The Port, together with the Educational Service District and some other local interests, put together the Confluence Technology Center about 12, 14 years ago now. Commissioner Baldwin was at the Port at the time. And the NOAA trunk came into the CTC as well as redundant power from both of the dams. So it became this core facility for technology support and rapid transmission of data. And attracted the first data center in North Central Washington. Yahoo was the first customer there at CTC to establish a data center, and it's grown considerably around here since. Since that time, several other technology companies have landed here and expanded here. I know it's benefited other local companies. But we continue to believe that because of the quality of life in North Central Washington and the broad offering we have, that technology companies on the west side would do well to look at this community as a place to expand, particularly given the really high quality capacity of our fiber networks here. And so the founder and president of Subsplash has a family connection to this region, and he has been looking for an opportunity to get over here. They've been looking for about the past year, and finally we were able to find him a location that worked for the company, and I'll turn it over to Phil momentarily. But as you may know, the Pybus Market down on the waterfront is a completely cool facility. They're remodeling their annex right now, and as part of that remodel, the Port took a lease on a section, and we've created a tech incubator to try to support technology companies moving over here, trying us on for size, and then sending down roots in the private community.
Cool.
And Subsplash is our first tenant at the tech incubator. This is Phil Goodman. He's the director of people programs at Subsplash, and throw it to Phil.
Thanks, Pat. Yeah, like he was saying, our company goes back in 2005 with Christy. She was a local Wenatchee resident, and her husband. Her husband was a product manager by trade, and started the company initially as a consulting firm, a design consulting firm, working with Microsoft, Expedia, and other companies. But when the recession hit, they had to pivot and figure out what else they could do with their skills, and that was right when the iPhone was coming out. And so they saw a need in the church technology space and created the first church app. And that was for a church in Seattle. And right when that was produced, it went just viral. Every church around the country, all the mega churches were calling them saying, hey, we want this too. And
What did the app do? What was the?
yeah, it's just basically delivered all the content. So connected the church with their congregation. The church there in Seattle has lots of video, and so it's a lot of just content delivery, push notifications, but really a way to take the old printed bulletin and information and put it in the hands of where people are interacting. And so they were using the latest mobile technology, and really were the first to space. We were streaming media before Netflix was back in the day.
Interesting.
And so since then, that's kind of been our core business. Just using the latest mobile technology to serve churches, ministries, and nonprofits. Right now we have thousands of clients around the world, millions of users, billions of impressions on our apps, and our company has grown to about 90 employees in Seattle. We have a lot of millennial, younger generation employees in Seattle that right now are feeling that quality of life, the pinch. And the last few years, it's been something we've been discussing about why we're losing some of our top talent. And a lot of that was just to other opportunities, quality of life. And so for Tim, our CEO and founder, he always had this vision of coming back to Wenatchee, where his wife was from. It's been a part of our company for years. We've been taking groups over here and team retreats. And so last year, we just decided to, hey, let's scope it out. So for last year, I've been leading that effort and working with Pat. And for us, the broadband was like the first prerequisite for us coming over here. It really gives a company like ours the infrastructure to then be creative, be innovative, and to use that for kind of our own innovations. And so for us, it was a huge deal, not only for us as a company, but then attracting people like Brian, who has now moved here to Wenatchee to help lead our team here, to want to move his family over here. So it's really been a huge kind of thing that we looked at, and with GWATA and other companies here already, it's provided a great kind of foundation for us to launch off into.
Well, I think saying that broadband's a necessary predicate to even looking is just the rule of the new economy.
Yeah.
So I'm glad that these leaders made sure that that's a possibility. How do you work as far as your operations? Is there a subset of your operations you're thinking about doing in Wenatchee, or is it, how do you divide up responsibility between Wenatchee and Seattle?
Yeah, that's great. Right now we're starting with our sales and support, product support kind of teams, but our ideal is to create an opportunity for any department to come over here. So we're currently looking kind of like at an 18 to 24 month plan for all of our engineers, other people, if they wanted to move over here, we could start teams here. So that's taking kind of just changing our internal processes. But with broadband, high-speed internet, that makes kind of going that route a lot easier, and it's less risky for us. And so we're kind of starting with that, and then our goal is to really expand our operations here and hire more and more people here in the Wenatchee region. We're hoping to have at least 20 people next year, and hiring a lot more after that.
So can I ask you the lay question here? It has surprised me that we have not seen more of this happening organically. I mean, I know Wenatchee is one of the coolest places in the whole universe to live. I mean, it really is, just from a lifestyle perspective, and costs are reasonable, and it's just an amazing place to live. And I would have thought we would have seen more entrepreneurs like you make that shift earlier, from the Microsofts and from the Expedias and from the, why hasn't that happened? And let me ask maybe this question. My sense is because people haven't really thought about it. It's interesting, somebody had an experience here, they lived here, their relatives lived here, or somebody skied here, so they just kind of got to know the community a little bit, and boom, now they say, well, let's do business here. Is that the key that's missing? People just don't think about it, they don't know it?
Well, Governor, I might jump in to try to respond to that. So GWATA has recently started the Flywheel Investment Conference and an angel investment network in Wenatchee. So one of the things we noticed is that technology companies didn't have access to early stage capital through angel investors. We didn't have a formalized network.
Right.
And so Commerce was a great partner to us this year. We hosted an event on April 19th where we attracted companies from Pullman to Port Townsend to come into Wenatchee to compete for $100,000, at the conclusion of which one company won an investment, Cartogram, which is based in Seattle. And through our nonprofit, we're spending a lot of time going to the Bellevue Tech Expo, going to GeekWire events, working with the WTIA, Michael Schutzler's organization, because I do think that once people are tapped to come into our community and they see it and experience it, they're interested. So we're just trying to be really strong ambassadors and champions by going to them through these venues and then attracting them to us through an annual investment event that really brings technology companies together.
And I'll add to that. I've lived here for 4 decades now, and I've really seen Wenatchee evolve, over that time, and things just sort of over the last 10 years, I think, have really come together, on a lot of different fronts. We've talked a lot about quality of life. Well, we've seen our outdoor recreation economy really grow. We've seen some of these businesses start to relocate here. I think, Pybus Market, and Mayor Coontz getting elected, but there's a whole new vibe. There's a whole new sort of vibe to Wenatchee that I've picked up on over the past 10 years or so. We've had a lot of people move in, so and I try to be a personal ambassador too. I was on that Rotary bike ride, and I mentioned Wenatchee. I said, hey, told some guy from Smash, you should relocate here. But one of the things that I think we tend to focus on sometimes is trying to recruit the people from within our state, that west side when we're here. What I really want, I'm sure the governor would probably agree, is we want those folks who are going to locate in Boise to locate in Wenatchee, right? Because that's how we can grow our state economy. Fortunately, for all the years that I've been in the legislature and the years the governor's been governor, our state economy has been really doing well. And that has helped us make extra investments in K-12 education and all these other things. So if we can continue to grow our economy and hopefully recruit out-of-state folks to locate here, and eventually that'll happen too. So now it's just starting with, I think the West Siders are starting to realize the opportunities, and hopefully people from out-of-state too, and we can just kind of continue to grow it.
I think as long as people can get here for weekends,
Yeah.
you need to have someone who's touched Mission Ridge or is touched here. We've had some luck in San Francisco with the Diamond Foundry coming this way, and you look at their cost of living and their cost of power, and all of a sudden Wenatchee is really attractive for both of those. Seattle cost of living, yes, but you can still get here and have fun quickly. So I tend to think that it's Southern California, Mid-California, those sorts of companies are going to look at this and say, wow, we have really, and I think what Jenny talks about, I think what I've learned a little bit, and Mr. William, we don't have an angel network. You don't have anything in your town. You need to have an angel investor network to help the small companies be successful. We don't have one of those quite yet. We're getting there. And I think both of those things really need to happen to get us more sort of attracting new businesses.
Well, I think it's also the tech community that GWATA's helping nurture and create now. I mean, and how progressive the city and the counties are. I've been so impressed with the morning meetings, the breakfasts that they have every couple of months or once a month, and just how open they are about how, here's what we're doing. We want more advice on what else we can do to help businesses succeed. And so a lot of that has just been fostering all of that.
And if I can also speak too, as a former educator, inspiring the talent that we have here to stay here and not want to move to Seattle or to San Francisco. But we've got some incredible kids doing amazing things in our school system, and to inspire them to stay here and start tech here and to keep growing that community out here, I think is also key. And the work that they're doing in Appleton and with GWATA that I'm really excited to get to work with is also key to that.
You'll find Pet Hub volunteering to teach coding to kids at the Wenatchee Library on Saturdays.
Oh, great.
And so we're getting really involved with that
That's
STEM
great.
initiative. I do want to kind of pivot a little bit, and I did want to highlight the Sky-Fi program for a few minutes as we wrap up this discussion, because Local-Tel has done an incredible job in areas that fiber's not going out to, and maybe educate the governor a little bit on that program before we kind of move into open.
First, I'd start off by saying that what Steve wrote over there, totally agree with, and I think, Governor, I really wish you'd read that and take to heart what he's saying there. It's important to us, and it's important to this area, what he's writing there. The reason why I think we're doing so well here with the broadband is because of the PUDs. And before the fiber project, we were a small-man company, 10-man, providing business services. Because of the fiber projects at Chelan, Douglas, and Grant County, we have about 26,000 customers. Pretty much all of them came from, a competing company or new in the area. They're all getting, you can get 100 meg internet here now for $40 a month. I mean, that's gig internet for $70 a month. These are huge, and the power prices here are just low as can be. I mean, 4 cents a kilowatt or whatever it is. So I would start with that. Our Sky-Fi, thank you for the lead in on that. We're using Sky-Fi, which is wireless technology. It's fixed wireless though. So like you have a mobile phone, right? But most of your mobile phones have a cap of 10 gig or 20 gig. That lets you go anywhere, but you have this cap. The fixed wireless allows us to put an antenna in somebody's house and shoot it up to a tower that we have at the top of a mountain around here. So it's fixed, nothing's moving, but they can get high-speed internet. And And they can get a lot of gigabytes for it. You know, they can have pretty much, our Sky-Fi is pretty much unlimited internet. We have a cap on it, but we never enforce it, kind of thing. So it allows them to pretty much do anything they can do on fiber, they can pretty much do with wireless. And so we've been delivering that to places where there is no fiber, and there may not be fiber for quite a while. Like he said, the last 15% is the most expensive for the PUD, and so going up the Indiana Valley, going in a lot of these different canyons, it may be a while before we get up there. So we're using wireless to get to them, to give them high-speed internet. It's at a much lower cost for the install than fiber. It's affected by weather and stuff, but it's still very good. It's up 99.some% of the time. So that's what we've been doing. We saw the need for that, and I was surprised how fast it grew. We have almost 5,000 customers of our 26,000 customers who actually have wireless with us, waiting for fiber someday to show up.
Yeah.
Okay. So, and most of them are, it's a win-win. I mean, it's a win for us because we get a new customer, but it's really kind of gratifying to give somebody internet up a canyon who has had nothing, right, and just stuck there. And of course, they chose to live there, of course. But when you bring it back, I've had some of my happiest letters I get from people are just like, thank you so much for bringing internet up here. I didn't realize there's one lady up the White River, which if you know where that is, it's way up there, who's lived up there for a long time. She said she'd forgotten what it was like to have a TV or a real phone connection or internet. So I like what we're doing there. I think it's something we're going to continue to grow on for a while, but eventually, hopefully, the PUD's fiber will probably get out to those areas, and that'll be probably the end result. The fiber build-outs also have a unique thing, Governor, that it has this private-public kind of thing going on with it. The PUDs provide the road to the people's home, the fiber, but we provide the services on it.
Right.
And we've invested millions into that, and so this is subjective, but we would like to keep that relationship that way and not have to compete with the PUDs in the future for that. I've talked to him about it, and so I'm hoping that structure will stay in place. I think there is enough service providers that will make it stay competitive. $40 internet for 100 meg is pretty competitive. Okay.
By the way, you're hosting us today, right? Is this your building here now?
It used to be.
He sold part of it back to.
This is another. We sold this to them. It's a new public-private partnership. You want to explain it, Frank?
Yes, this was obviously a federal building that surplus. We bid sort of against local tel for a while. Didn't feel like two local companies, the government and the local company should bid against each other. Right. We got out, they bid and closed. We turned this building into 5 condominiums. We purchased 3 of the 5 from local tel, so we own the floor that you're on, the floor above this. About 2/3 of the main old mail sorting room, which will be our new city hall in 3 to 4 years. We're going to put glass all around the building, skylights, and really make this what I call the Pybus market of city halls. This is going to be a super cool retrofit.
That's exciting.
Yeah, lots of square footage for a real reasonable price, and so we're excited about this building.
Yeah, we all felt it was very much a big win for the south end down here and for the city and private both. That's a win-win.
And what floors do you retain, Dimitri?
We maintain, this may sound weird, but the parts that we bid on, the parts that we wanted, was the basement, the loading dock, and the roof. That's all I wanted. I don't want people to have to walk in the local tel up the marble steps. This is not good. City Hall's good for that. So, and it turned out that Frank and the city, the parts that we didn't want, they could really use. And this will be a very good public-private, we think, relationship. We kept the top roof for Sky-Fi. So we put our towers up there and it shoots to all the mountains. The basement, well, we have the building across the street, which is where our phone company, our TV company, our internet company is at. We have about 150 employees, 60 to 80 of them across the street. All the rest are in Grant Road. So we wanted to move them closer, you know, so we're right across the street. When they move in, we will probably move in at the same time onto the loading dock, and then we'll have our people down here. This place will go from being sometimes a ghost town to very busy building and a very busy area, we're hoping.
There are still 5 government agencies in here
Yeah.
that have a lease with us in the city of State.
Social Security's downstairs, there's the judge's chambers over here.
Can you tell them what you do in the shower room? Is that not what's
Oh, the old locker room?
Yeah.
I have a grow room of tomatoes. So we're growing hydroponic tomatoes. It's business we're looking at because of the low power. Right? And I think hydroponic, you know, growing, you've probably seen this yourself. If you start to research it, growing foods that way is probably the future of the world. And
I didn't mean to embarrass you, sorry.
Yeah, thanks.
Well, we're heading towards the time where we have to wrap up, so I wanted to open it up for any additional comments or feedback for the governor. Continue.
Jenny, I'd like to address the governor's previous question about why aren't there more software companies coming over this way? It's a great question, and as you know, port districts around the state have been working on that question. And Senator Hawkins said something really interesting, and I've spoken to Mike as well as Brad over time about when these large technology companies come into your office as supplicants asking for a vote on a bill or for some favor, talk to them about this community and your community and ask them would they be interested in locating here and connect them to the city, the port, the PUD. And you can be even more helpful than our 12th district delegation in that regard in asking some of these very successful companies to spread the wealth around the state. We can provide high value and a really quality offering here. Senator Hawkins rode next to this president of a avionics firm in the ride last weekend. As he was saying, we've followed up with this guy. He's very interested in relocating. His biggest question of us is, what sort of money do we have to offer him by way of relocation costs? And as you know, we don't have those sorts of budgets in Washington State. But connecting our communities to those big companies and the leadership in those companies, if that can somehow be incorporated into a state effort to communicate the benefits of these communities for those technology firms, it really is very, very helpful when there isn't a family connection drawing them over here. So in that regard, the influence of your office and you personally promoting rural Washington to those software companies would be tremendously helpful. Second thing I'd add is that we all know that there's limited building capacity in this region. There isn't a lot of available space, and that's one of the challenges we need to overcome is to have modern Class A office that technology firms are really interested in locating.
Yeah, well, that's a good suggestion on the first, on how we can help, and I'll take you up on that. But I also believe there's a strategy, and I've thought about this but not really implemented it, of a lifestyle recruitment opportunity where you get the executives just personally to know the community, even absent any particular pitch, to come here. You know what I'm saying here? The people who have come here because they had a connection to the community, and just almost like if we went and recruited execs from Expedia and Microsoft and say, just get them over here skiing 3 times a year and get them to go up on the Chelan. I'm serious. I've wondered, have them go up the enchantments, don't walk on the snowfield up Asgard Pass. Stay in the rocks, stay in the rocks. But anyway, that's just a dream I've had.
And it's a great dream and it's a great notion. Our offering is very similar to the offering that Bend and Kelowna and a bunch of other Mountain West high quality of life outdoor rec towns have. How do we differentiate? And it's a competitive world out there, we understand that.
Well, the differentiation, they got a better governor. Mayor.
Well, I do want to.
Who cares about their legislation?
Say good job to the leadership that's in the room, though, because I really do think, I've been here for 25 years, always born and raised in Eastern Washington, and really, probably in the last 5 years, we've really demonstrated that we're working together more than we ever had been. We had been in a lot of silos for a number of years, and I see a lot more collaboration between public and private. And I think the private sector is really engaging now in the recruitment efforts. And I feel like we're open for business like we never have been before. And that really is to all the leadership in the room are definitely working together. So good job, you guys. And the Flywheel Conference is really going to be huge because we are getting those executives who have the affinity to the region, who have homes here and are spending time here and are actually nudging us out of our comfort zone in getting that infrastructure in place. So in about a year from now, you're going to probably see a lot of even more cool things happening, so.
Yes, we'd love for you to attend next year.
Yeah.
Well, thank you to this group for.
I just wanted to say a couple things, if I might. Governor, I serve on capital budget and technology and economic development committees. And there's a really nice intersection there between what the work we're doing around CURB and broadband and trying to build out a statewide office for broadband, as you're probably familiar with the legislation we tried to run at the end of session last year. But I think it's important, Chelan County is the gem, really, of broadband connectivity. But the rest of the 12th district does really suffer, sort of fits and starts as it relates to connectivity. I was in the Met House yesterday, and there is a real desire to see economic development happen, but you can't have effective economic development without effective access to broadband. And what we've learned on the Technology and Economic Development Committee is that broadband and connectivity are really more of a utility than they are just a luxury anymore. And so how we change the dialogue from just a luxury connection to a utility that all communities and all people in those communities should have access to is something I think we need to work on as a state. And definitely recognizing that for places like the Met who offer the same quality of life, beautiful recreational opportunities, there is a real draw from that Seattle market that people want to live here. But we have to start with the fundamentals. And then the quality of that connectivity is the other piece. So you can have connectivity, and I think we touched on it earlier a little bit with sort of the mapping that exists across the country. There might be connectivity in these places, but if you have a really slow, download and upload speed, you're not going to have the same sort of internet experience that your company may need to thrive. So all those things I think have to be continued to, in the conversation, and really appreciate the fact that you took time to come out and listen to our concerns, but thinking more broadly too in the 12th district, Chelan County being the gem, and then real rural communities in the rest of our district and what they might need as well.
And if I could just add on something, we talked a little bit about this in the car, but since you have your staff here too, when we talk about policy and governor request legislation and the Senate bill advanced out of the Senate didn't make it all the way to your desk, but in that legislation there was a component about competitive grants and the efforts to try to promote broadband deployment and things like that and offering grants through the state. And I just want you to know that we shouldn't be punished in any way through the policy by us being so proactive here. So because we have been early achievers and we've had a lot of success with that, there needs to be some way legislatively, and this is something that I'll try to ensure as well, that the legislation acknowledges those areas that have taken risk and been proactive and built out to the underserved areas already, so that we can get our fair share of those dollars, even though we've done such a good job already. So, so if there's some way to be thinking about that as we develop legislation for the future, I want to make sure that we, we're acknowledged in that way. Yeah.
Well, Brad, to go along with that, I mean, obviously over here, we have 4 counties that are already doing fiber, that
Right.
we touch and that are all tied together.
Right.
Chelan, Douglas, Grant, Okanagan. So there's already infrastructure. There's already stuff in place. They just need help pushing it that last legs and getting it out there. So the legislation should help some of that that's already in place. Don't reinvent it. just, they're already making the steps, just help them get it out there further.
Right, and in regards to the digital divide, sometimes policymakers like me and from other areas think about how can we get those that haven't been served? Well, we want to do that, certainly, but I think we should also make sure that those that haven't been served in our area, can get, access to the same, commensurate amount of funding to do what we need to do.
We'll do one more remark and then we'll have to.
Well, just a quick question, when you're thinking about grants, you're also thinking in terms of other terms of funding low-interest loans for some of these small communities. I saw the Public Works Trust Fund, I know that's not the place for this, but it might, or it might be, but it might be that type of a mechanism for some very low-interest loans for some of these rural communities that have maybe already built out some infrastructure, but give them an opportunity other than grants. And a self-sustaining fund.
The curb is a low-interest loan, correct?
75% bond, 25%
Yeah.
grant.
Yeah.
Yeah, 25%.
But we'll need more than $10 million next year,
not
by the
gonna
way.
be-
That's what I'm sorry, JC.
No, it
They
won't
need
be
to
that.
expand that program.
They do.
Yeah.
Well, thank you all for your feedback. I'll let the governor conclude us, and because I believe we have to make a trip out of here. So
Yeah, listen, I learned some things today, and I've got some great stories to tell around the state, and hopefully you can help continue to advocate for this, because Wenatchee is a shining example of what you can do with broadband. We've heard from these companies, and it's exciting to see entrepreneurs moving into this community and building a new technology-driven economy. And I believe that is a future vision for this place, and it's exciting to see that start. But it all starts with broadband. That's a message I'll share with other communities. And I hope you will work with us to continue building this throughout the state with policies, because we'll be happy when we win, when the Mariners win the World Series, and when we have 100% coverage. And we want that to happen the same day, which is, just in several months. So we really hope that you will help us and give Brad and Mike and other legislators support in doing that. You mentioned you'd like some more capital. I hope that that's possible. I will tell you, we start with somewhere between $1 billion and a $2 billion deficit in the next legislative session, which is incredible when you've got the best economy in world history and still have a deficit because our revenue system does not keep pace with the growth of the economy. It's just really strange. We've got the best economy and the worst financial condition, which is an irony. But I am hopeful that we can do some more building on the $10 million that we did last time. I'm hopeful. I don't know where that's going to come from at the moment, but I know that it's extremely important to rural and small town development, and I know that it can pay great dividends. And we haven't talked as much about education as perhaps we need to, but I look at this as fundamental to, now that we've solved McCleary, to really finishing the job, which you can't do as long as, somewhere between 15 and 30% of your students don't have access to broadband. Because that's fundamental. You look at the efforts in schools now to flip the school day, where they're listening to lectures at night and doing their homework in the school. You can't do that if 20 to 30 to 40% of your students don't have access to broadband. So this new reform movement's going on through our schools can't reach maturation unless we can guarantee our children an equitable access to this. So this is very much an educational issue for me as well as economic. So I want to thank you for this effort, and I've got to get back and do some work on the west side now and enjoy one of the most beautiful places to live, which is Wenatchee. Mr. Mayor, thank you for your leadership. You've been a real dynamic feature for this part of the country, and I thank you for your leadership. Let's go get them. Thanks a lot.
Thank you for coming.